last year called The Four Lenses of Innovation. And there's a Chinese version of that book that I think there may even be some copies here available today. But I wanted to share with you the basic idea behind that book. And that is, I wanted to pretty much figure out where innovation actually comes from. How do you get to these breakthrough innovation strategies? And what I found in my research is that when I went out and started to look at some of the world's greatest innovation champions, even talk to some of these guys, you have to ask yourself, how does the mind of the innovator work? How do people like Steve Jobs, and Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Howard Schultz of Starbucks, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, how do they come up with their disruptive ideas? The same, of course, goes for your own great Chinese innovation champions. How does the mind of the innovator work? And I did a lot of research into hundreds of cases of business innovation. And the conclusion I came to was that innovators basically use patterns of thinking that are different than most people. And if we can figure out what those patterns of thinking are, then we can perhaps reverse engineer them. We can create a set of tools, methodologies, that will enable us to think like innovation champions. So you can learn to think like Elon Musk, or Jeff Bezos, or Steve Jobs, or Jack Ma, or whoever. So what I found is that innovators come to their discoveries by looking at the world from a fresh perspective. And there were four particular kinds of perspectives, I call them lenses, that enable you to look at things differently. And by looking at things differently, you're able to discover opportunities that are out there, hidden in plain sight. By definition, they're out there, but the only way to see them is by wearing or using these lenses. So what are these lenses? The first is called challenging orthodoxy, challenging conventional wisdom, thinking different, doing things differently, challenging the status quo. If everyone is zigging, you zag. You do the opposite. The second lens is harnessing trends, understanding all the changes that are taking place in the world around us, and saying, how do we harness the power of change, bring it into our business model to create new value for customers? The third lens of innovation is called leveraging resources in new ways. So how do we use our own core competencies, our skills, and our assets, and stretch them into new growth opportunities? Or how do we combine what we have with somebody else's resources, somebody else's strategic assets? And in this case, EMC provides assets that you can use to stretch into new opportunities. And the fourth lens of innovation is called understanding needs. So it's really about getting under the skin of the customer. It's understanding what are the emerging needs in the market, and how do we design solutions from the customer backwards, from the need backwards. So these are the four lenses of innovation. And if we use those lenses systematically, we can come up with incredibly powerful innovation strategies for this new digital era. So the first is called challenging orthodoxy. And it's really about taking conventional wisdom in an industry, or even just inside your company, and turning it on its head. I thought Frank's card game was really interesting. He said, which card do you select? And you looked at one card and you just ignored the rest. That's what happens if you're wearing blinkers. If you think this is the only way to do things in this industry. How many of us know somebody, that thinks that way? There's only one way of doing things. There might be nothing wrong with that way of doing things. But if you go through the world like this, as Frank taught us, you're going to be blind to all those other opportunities that lay outside of that very narrow field of vision. So if you look at the companies today that are so successful in terms of innovation, it's the companies that are challenging orthodoxy. Think about Uber or Didi. The world's largest taxi companies today own no vehicles. The world's largest accommodation providers don't have any real estate. They don't own huge hotels like this one, with all the real estate costs and so on. The world's most popular media companies create no content. Who creates all the content? Well, you do. The people out there in the world do. They don't do it. The world's largest phone companies today own no telecommunication infrastructure. The world's largest movie distribution companies don't own any cinemas. The world's most valuable retailer has no inventory. The world's most powerful software companies don't sell you any software. None of us have ever bought any software from Google or from Baidu. They give it away, and they sell your eyeballs to the advertisers. So Steve Jobs once said, don't be trapped by dogma, by orthodoxy thinking. He said, dogma, it means really living with the results of other people's thinking. And if you think about it, ever since we were little kids, we have been influenced by other people's thinking. First it was our parents, our brothers and sisters, the people at school, our school teachers. And then we went to university and we've got other people's thinking from the professors and all the books that we read. And then we joined a company, and what did they teach us? Other people's thinking. Here's how we do things around here. So our minds are full of other people's thinking. And Steve Jobs is saying, think different, right? Break out of that. That's why when he launched the Think Different campaign, he said, here's to the crazy ones. Because it's the crazy ones, those who are crazy enough to think they can change the world, who actually do change the world. So you need to be a little bit crazy to challenge conventional wisdom. And that's what these companies have all done. They were crazy. They did things that nobody else would have done. And this goes for all the companies that I've talked about so far. Tesla's a great example. Elon Musk is kind of crazy. You know, who starts a rocket company? Who starts, an electric car company where everyone in Detroit is telling you there's no way you can succeed with this at all? But they've challenged orthodoxies all the way. It's become the car of the century, the safest car in the world. The whole drivetrain is a complete revolution. It's a battery on wheels. But it's not just a battery on wheels. It's basically an iPad on wheels. It's a tablet on wheels. It's software on wheels. Everything about it is, as I said, software driven. We heard this story of, you go and sit in the car at night as it's being updated, the software. It's the only car in the world that actually gets better with time. So, you buy the car and 3 years later, it's a better car than it was when you bought it. So these features like autonomous driving and so on are literally just software updates. And of course, Tesla is using all of the available technologies from apps and so on that control the car when you're not inside it, and the Apple Watch and so on. Challenging orthodoxies in terms of the way you sell a car. I mean, just the fact that for the Model 3, they took in 400,000 pre-orders for a car, basically pre-financed the building and the development of the car. These showrooms that are very much like Apple stores. The fact that they didn't go after environmentally conscious customers. They didn't go after green people, tree huggers. They went after people that had enough money to buy themselves a great car. And so that in itself was challenging orthodoxy. And then they were told, well, you'll never succeed because you don't have charging stations. Well, we'll build our own charging stations. And they have, of course, these wonderful networks of superchargers across every country now you can probably think of. And they're using some very interesting new technologies as well that they're playing with inside of those charging stations. Very digital driven. In Seoul, South Korea, this is an example, been around for a few years, but still blows me away, where they said, why does a supermarket have to actually be a supermarket? What we're looking at here is a subway station in Seoul. How many of you have seen this before? How many of you have seen this example? So this is a subway station in Seoul where people come down to the subway after work, it's say 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and they go up to these interactive panels. That's, by the way, the entrance to the subway train. So you order your food using your smartphone from these interactive panels. You get on the train, you travel home, and by the time you get there, they're delivering the things you ordered to your door. Now that's digital transformation. In less than 1 year, they had 900,000 downloads of that app. By far the most popular shopping app in South Korea. And Home Plus is now the country's #1 online retailer. And they've moved this concept now to other places and other things so that retailers don't have to have any inventory in the store. You just go there at lunchtime and you make your orders, and those things will be delivered to your home. So you don't have to go home with shopping bags full of heavy things. They even have them at bus stops now. Here's an example from the U.S. that's challenging orthodoxy. Why do eyeglasses have to be so expensive? How many of you are wearing eyeglasses here in the room today? Can I see a show of hands? How many of you wear eyeglasses? None of 3 people? Get out of here. More, you're wearing eyeglasses. I see you wearing eyeglasses. Nothing to be ashamed of. How much did you pay for your eyeglasses? You know, on average, eyeglasses in the U.S. at least cost around $263. That's average price. Now, in your currency, that would be about 1,800 yuan, right? So incredibly expensive. So one company, Warby Parker, has created an online eyeglass business. They call them the Netflix of prescription glasses. And basically what they do is they looked at the industry and they said that the eyeglasses stores are putting a 200 or 300% markup on top of those glasses. That's why they're so expensive. So they said, we're going to offer them for an average of $95. That's about 1/3 of the price of normal prescription glasses. So what you do, you go online, you go to their website, you choose the frames that you think you'd be interested in, you take a digital picture of yourself, and you're using their virtual mirror, and you try on those frames initially, and then you order 5 or 6 frames, I think it's 5. They deliver a box of 5 frames to your home. You try them all on in the real world, you choose the one you like, and you send the rest back. That's a completely new model. And so now they do have 1 or 2 of their own stores, but interestingly, they have sold over 1 million pairs of glasses since 2009 when they were founded. They're now valued at over $1 billion. That's digital transformation. That's the way the mind of the innovator works. Innovators look at what everyone else is doing, and they challenge that. They want to do things differently. Dee Hock, the founder of Visa, once said, the problem is never how to get new, innovative thoughts into your mind. The problem is, how do you get the old ones out? How do you get all of that thinking from other people out of your head? How do we break the chains that are pulling us back towards the old ways of doing things, the legacy ways of doing things? That's why the biggest threat in any industry is the newcomers. It's the companies, the entrepreneurial companies, that come into an industry without any preconceptions about the way things are supposed to be done. So what I do when I work with companies, the first thing I do is ask them, what if you challenge your assumptions about who you think your customers are and what those customers want and what you should be providing and how you should provide it and how you make money and how you differentiate. Challenge all of those assumptions using the power of